All right, guys, it's 1:01 p.m. Thursday, August 27th, and that means it's time for Members Only Thursday. We were supposed to do a Members Only Wednesday, but I had some family stuff, so I couldn't do Wednesday. So here we are on Thursday. And episode 4 of the Bigelow Podcast, the Bigelow George Knapp podcast dropped with Brandon Fugal, and it's really good. So we're going to talk about that today. And also, Mayim Bialik, who has an amazing podcast. I love her show is awesome. Interviewed Tom Campbell. And that turned out to be better than I imagined it could be. I hadn't heard an interview with Tom for a while, so this was a nice refresh. And we're going to talk about that. And we're going to look at some stuff that Bigelow Aerospace is actually up to, what it is that they do. What do you do here? What do you actually do? We'll read some comments. I don't know. We'll talk a little shop. Great to see everybody. Mr. Justin, hey, I got the book. Thanks to Mr. Justin for sending me Ernest Cline's Armada. I'm excited to read this. Ernest Cline, the author of Ready Player One, which I was a huge fan of. Not the movie so much, but I loved the book. The movie felt a little... They just threw too much at the wall, I think. It works as a book because you're drawing on your own pool of memories about those historical references and those cultural references. But in the movie, when they try to just show it, it's someone else's interpretation of the thing, and it doesn't have the same magic to it. So I don't know. That was just my 2 cents on the movie. But I'm excited to read this. Thanks for sending this, Justin. He fired this off to me the other day, and it just showed up. So thanks. What else is going on? The mug today is the USS Enterprise NCC 1701A. That's the mug. There you go. Bone china. There it is. What? That's the mug. And the coffee, of course, is Night Shift the coffee. It's right here. You can go to teamnightshift.com and pick up your own package of Night Shift the coffee. Use discount code NIGHTSHIFT10 for 10% off your first order. Why Night Shift coffee? Why not? Also, huge thank you to Grant McCracken and the gang at Chattanooga Whiskey. I've mentioned this a few times. We talked about it a little bit last week, and I think I mentioned it on Doomer Friday before that. But Grant is a longtime listener, first-time caller. He actually reached out, and they're fans of the show, fans of Doomer Friday, fans of UFOs, fellow nerds, and they reached out and sent bottles to myself, Xander. Dan is getting a bottle. Pavel got one. And we're going to have Grant actually join us on the show on Doomer Friday in a couple of weeks to talk about UFO stuff. And we'll taste some whiskey. We're in the interesting and very cool place of being at a point now where we can actually have conversations with people that we would like to have as sponsors or brand partners. And some of those conversations are happening. But it's tricky because we don't want to sell out, right? Like if we're going to have somebody that sponsors the show or contributes something to the show, it has to be an organic relationship. It has to feel like a good fit, and it just has to make sense. So it was cool. It was a cool connect. The whiskey that he sent over is called Intergalactic Comet Crusher, and it's got some alien glyphs on the side and a little top secret eyes only QR code. And I have not opened this yet because, to be perfectly honest, I don't drink a lot of whiskey. And I tried to be a whiskey guy for about a minute a few years ago when it was like everybody was drinking whiskey. And I didn't know what I was doing, and I couldn't do it. So I'm interested to try this. I know Pavel's a whiskey guy. I believe he is anyway. So I don't know. We're going to have Grant come on the show, and we're going to taste some whiskey. We'll talk about it, tell you what we think. But just thanks for sending over the bottle, though. Appreciate that, guys. And that's Star Wars is the only mug. Thanks, Darnell. Darnell Pisco. Shout out to everybody in our chat today. Members only chat. The stream is public, but the chat is members only. Mr. Justin says, hit that like button and let's get this going. Please do that. Lost River Films. Great to see you. Love how these thumbnails are casting ufology as pulp fiction or fact. Yeah. So about that, the thumbnails, I got into this kick. I guess it's the Halloween spirit because they're putting out Halloween decorations in all the Walmart stores and like Home Depot and Lowe's. And I had to go to the garden center the other day to get some mulch for some landscaping that we were doing. And I took my son in. We go in the front door, and immediately right by the door are like these 30-foot tall Halloween robot animatronic decorations. I don't know if they have them where at the stores where you guys are. I guess it's a regional thing. I don't know. But here, that's what's out. And so now I've got to go over and push all the buttons and turn them all on. There's actually like 30 of these things. There's like little dancing mummies, and then there's like a giant vampire, and then there's like a wolf man that pulls his head off and all this stuff. So that kind of got me in the Halloween spirit. And I've been thinking about Halloween a little bit lately. And I thought, okay, so when we're doing these thumbnails, I just have fun with it. I enjoy it. So I like to think of weird, I don't know, silly things we can do with the thumbnails. And as I'm listening to the interview, I'm just kind of cherry picking ideas. And in this Bigelow episode, they talk about Fugal wanting to initially buy that ranch to put a Boy Scout thing there. It was going to be a scouting thing, and they're talking about this fucking werewolf, dire wolf thing that materializes and is jumping 50 feet in a single leap. And then by the time you get to the end of the episode, they're talking about this these red orbs that mind control people, and what else? I mean, God, it just goes all over the place. So because it's so easy to do now, I just start building the prompt, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to throw some ideas. And for creative, just spitballing, this is the coolest thing. I've been using Higgsfield. I do not have a sponsorship with Higgsfield. I pay for my monthly credits, and it's expensive, and it sucks. And I'm trying to get them to sponsor the show, but they're not doing it yet. But that's who I'm using. And so if you're wondering like how I'm making these thumbnails, that's part of it. And then in Higgsfield, you get all of the different text to image and text to video models all in one dashboard. So you load it up and it's like one big dashboard, and you can see everything. And you can start by creating a single image, and then you can basically switch that over to a video model. And now you can go from making a standalone still image to a animated piece. And so a lot of people that are doing really cool work in AI filmmaking right now are using that platform. And I'm trying to learn it and get there, but I don't have the real deep dive time that I need to really get in there and get my hands dirty. So I dabble with the thumbnails, and I'm just kind of like working with that. And so what I'll do is I'll just jot down a bunch of notes of cool things that stand out to me, and then I'll throw them at Claude, and I'll get Claude to, bounce some ideas back and forth. Sometimes I skip that step, but then I'll take them into Higgsfield, and I'll put them into one of the text to image models. And it's cool because you can choose like Google Nano Banana, or in a drop down, you can switch to C-Dream Pro or C-Dream Lite or GPT, or, any of the text to image models are there. And then you can render batches of them. So you can hit go and it'll crank out 4. And then you can hit go again and you can run another 4 at the same time. So now you're generating 8 possibilities. And then they'll come back, and I'll look for the ones that are kind of quirky and weird. And then from those, I'll pick one out. And then I'll go in and I'll do my own little edits. And then I'll take it into Photoshop and do a composite. That's kind of the workflow. But this episode just got so crazy. At one point, I'm like, I'm going to put Brian Dennehy in here, and I'm going to put the Black Knight from Monty Python, and I'm going to put a fucking Castle Grayskull. It just, it went off the rails. So I have a bunch of crazy ones that I haven't shown anybody yet, but they're sort of there. So I got in this horror movie mindset and this movie poster kick, and so we just, I don't know, we just threw something at the wall to see how it would go. I need to actually look at the data on this and see if those are more or less effective, because I just don't check and I don't really think about it. But I like them. What do you guys think? Grelch says, I get the feeling that with each successive Bigelow pod, more and more, I get the feeling he is nuts. Darnell Pisco 7473 says, can you trust a billionaire? Bigelow, though, Clint. Okay, can you trust any billionaire? The Bigelow. Great question. First, let's go with, is Bigelow nuts? I don't think Bigelow is nuts. I took away from this episode that, where is he? Bigelow and Fugal are the kinds of billionaires that I really want to hang out with, right? Like, I don't think being a billionaire innate just turns you into a shitty person. I don't think that's necessarily true, right? I think that there is a correlation, obvious correlation, between people who have seemingly unlimited amounts of money and political influence and their need to meddle in the affairs of the everyday person. And it's like, if you're just a billionaire business person and that's your world and you kind of stay in your lane, that's one thing. And you're building rockets or you're building space technology or you're doing something and you're doing it really well, that's one thing. When the billionaire becomes a problem is when they start buying the government, buying all of their competitors, engaging in unfair trade practices and monopolizing their industry and becoming a real general fucking nuisance, and lecturing people on how they should live their lives and why we should all think a certain way or feel a certain way. It's like, now you're out of your lane and it's got my attention and I have a problem. And the difference between a guy like Bigelow and a guy like Elon Musk is that Bobby Bigelow, in addition to having some fucking amazing personal style, but let's be honest, this guy has amazing hair. The fucking mustache is awesome. The whole shtick, he's a Bigelow bowling ball behind him in this shot. You can see he's a Bigelow bowling champion. This guy's amazing. I don't know Bobby Bigelow at all, but I want to keep calling him Bobby Bigelow, and I would love to know him better. This guy seems super cool. And he's fascinated with two things: outer space and the unknown, the mysteries of the unknown. Guess what? Those are my two pastimes too. So I am already on board with, I would be doing what he's doing. If I had billions of dollars and a corporate machine that could produce spacecraft, of course I would be doing this. So I'm cool with Bigelow. And in a broad sense, I think that it's awesome that he's using his fortune and his position and his connections to do what he's doing. And I'm really cool. I'm glad to see that he's cool enough to do it in the public eye and talk about it openly. And it's leadership and it's inspiring. That's cool. I disagree with some of his perspectives on what constitutes a whistleblower and where we get, the role of the gatekeeper and all of this. He is one of the people that I would call a gatekeeper. So I don't know if if his perspective on that is grounded in the reality that the rest of us are grounded in. But I think in broad strokes, I like him. I think he's cool. Elon, the problem with Elon is he wants to own everything. He wants to control everything. He wants to be involved in your government. He wants to know, everything about you. He wants to surveil people. It's just one person shouldn't be that deeply involved in that many things that are so critical to humanity, right? I'm talking about our communication satellite network, right? One private individual that owns more satellites than any government in the world, that's a problem. Like that's too much power concentrated in one person's hands. The same man owns an artificial intelligence that is capable of parsing tremendous amounts of complex data. And he also owns a lot of your data because he also owns the communication hub, the social media network, right? So you've got X, you have the hardware that the internet is actually running on in orbit. You've got the launch capability. You're wrapped up in all of these different defense programs in some way or another. Probably read into some UFO, UAP shit as well. Probably also being paid or advised or in some other way compensated for maintaining a very specific public stance on the issue of UFOs and UAP, if you know what I'm talking about. So this one guy is he's got way too much going on. Fugal, I don't know much about, to be honest. I'm actually learning more about him in this episode, but he is a venture capitalist and invests in tech startups, bioscience stuff, space stuff, communication stuff, all the same types of things that you would imagine a person who is in the know would be involved in, right? And someone who is interested in this topic and spends their own money and studies it intensely has a natural curiosity about all of these things. There's a lot of overlap between Fugal and what Bigelow are into, obviously. So I think that's really interesting, and I like this interview. They're very frank and honest, and they're very they go into some detail about some of the more interesting aspects that I hadn't heard about. So without further ado, let's just jump into this and take a listen to the first few minutes. George Knapp is going to set this up, and then we'll pause.
The moguls. This year, 2026, is a big anniversary year for the ranch. It's 20 years ago, 30 years ago, you bought it. 10 years ago, you bought it. Have you guys spoken to each other since that exchange was made?
So we've actually bought the farm. Is that what you're trying to tell us, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Have you spoken to each other since then?
So we had, I'll take that first.
Sure.
We had some great dialogue. I had the privilege of flying down here to Las Vegas to meet with Robert and to see his incredible aerospace facility out in North Las Vegas and have the discussion around the potential acquisition of the ranch. We continued that dialogue, turned it over to our attorneys, and ended up concluding that. And I think within a year or two, we hosted a gathering in Salt Lake City with many of the former members of the NIDS and BASS team, as well as my team of scientists and engineers, and really used that as a foundation to kick off our stewardship and investigation of Skinwalker Ranch with the Bigelow team's advice and guidance. But since that time, we've both been crazy busy going different directions. And this is without question, George, I think a most historic moment for these topics, not just a discussion about Skinwalker Ranch and the most scientifically studied paranormal hotspot on the planet, but I think this is historic in that we're touching on topics that I believe people should be paying more attention to than ever.
That's an interesting place to stop. More attention to than ever. I also didn't know that Skinwalker Ranch was the most heavily researched paranormal site in the world, but they do stress that a few times in this interview. George goes on to stress that, and which is fascinating. To be perfectly honest, when the whole Skinwalker thing initially took off, and there was the History Channel show, and it was just kind of everywhere, I didn't follow it all that much because at the same time there was a lot of disclosure stuff going on, and I was more focused on that. So a lot of this stuff passed me by. So I'm catching up on some of it now, and it's interesting to watch them tell the story side by side and share some anecdotes about the things that they saw. I also think that it's amazing and it's fun, kind of fun, that they're sort of Jurassic Park billionaires, right? Like they've got I've got a team of scientists and engineers. How fun would that be? Wouldn't you love to have a team of scientists and engineers that just go around with you? You're like, all right, boys, let's run this through the mainframe back at HQ. Get it to the engineering team. Mr. Justin, why does Brandon Fugal have a coaster over his cup? That's suspicious. That's weird. Does he not trust these guys, or is he weird? A coaster over his cup? What?
I agree. Yeah.
We're busy
Where are you seeing his cup?
with and have the discussion around the potential acquisition of the ranch. We continued that dialogue, turned it over to our attorneys and
Hotspot in the world because the investigation's been ongoing. But I'm wondering if we can get into, sort of what we learned. Robert, when you bought the property in 1996, did you have a game plan? I mean, it wasn't exactly a blueprint for studying a place like that, but you go there because it had a lot of UFO activity.
Okay, well, he does have a coaster over his cup. He's got a little paper thing over his cup. That's interesting. I don't know. Maybe it was just, maybe he's one of those people who's afraid of something getting into his drink. I don't know. Good eye, Justin. This bowling ball back here is pretty amazing. I love the fact that not only does Bigelow have a pencil thin mustache and this crazy like Vincent Price situation going on, but if he's into bowling enough that he's got his own Bigelow bowling ball, that's super geek territory, and I'm a big fan. I love it. Love this room too. They need to drink like cognac and sit there, and they need a fireplace. Maybe that is a fireplace back there.
In the Uinta Basin and on the ranch and some mutilations. You didn't know all the other stuff that was going on there, though, did you?
We had operated that ranch prior to the contract with DIA for quite a few years, so we knew back in, I think we contracted for that ranch with Terry Sherman in 95. Was it
96?
About 95. The DIA contract started in September of 2008. So we already had a history. And it wasn't just focused on what was happening on that ranch. It was other ranches, sister ranches, contiguous to it and outside of that for some distance. And we particularly established a strong rapport with BIA and the Deputy Sheriff's Department. And we gained enormous information by what they saw, what they chased, what happened in their homes, what happened in broad daylight in their front yards. When I never will forget a story by one BIA fellow, and he said that his wife was hysterical. She was out in the yard with their little boy, and this thing jumped over this alien creature, jumped over a cyclone fence like it was nothing, way over it, and got within, jumped on top of the roof of their house, as I recall, and she went hysterical, and then it leaped enormous distances, like maybe 50 feet at a time, and disappeared. So her husband drove to the house very quickly and checked everything out and so forth. But that anomalous kind of story and creature, which is unbelievable, was part of the data that we had, and the number of testimonies, reliable witnesses that we had, in addition to the sheriff people and the BIA people themselves, not just their family members. So we got into some really interesting things that were amazing. And I think you guys covered a couple of the stories in the Skinwalker, where the motel, the creature that was trying to climb over a wall, a pony wall, and the dog was barking in an A-frame office at the motel, and there was a security guard there, and he walked down and called for assistance, and as the sheriff people got there, then they wound up chasing this thing, right?
What? This is crazy. I don't know what to make of this. Just it sounds like a horror movie. It sounds like a Jeepers Creepers kind of a situation.
And it's about
Okay. Somebody in the chat said, let's see here. He's a Mormon. So he's not drinking. He's not going to drink. He has a coaster over his cup, something you do at a bar. So they don't roofie him, I guess. Mormons, Marines, and MBAs. Bigelow has his glass covered too. I wonder if that's is that like a habit thing? People just get in the habit of doing that. Yeah, so Cujo JK, this reminds me of the 911 call from the guy driving through the Carolinas, I think, where he claims a creature jumped in the bed of his truck. Yeah, that was a really weird call. I remember that. That was bizarre. This guy, called in a 911 dispatch and said that he was driving down the road and something jumped in the bed of his truck. And then he freaks out. And oh, man, when did this thing hit? It was so crazy. And he's just like freaking out. I can't find the original video, but it's on YouTube. If you look it up, it's like if you look up 911 call monster in the bed of the truck, he goes, "That's not human. That's not human." And he's freaking out. I wonder where that took place. So they go on and they're describing all of this stuff about Skinwalker and how they came to meet, right? Bigelow and Fugal, and how they came to exchange ownership of the ranch. And there is a really interesting anecdote here about Fugal going to Bigelow Aerospace's building, and then Bigelow talks about something that happened there. I'm going to play this next clip and just take a listen. This is really weird.
Some version of interfering with what you're doing is going to occur. And they're not always. There's no warning for what most of this happens. There's no. And a lot of things aren't repeated the same way twice. They're unique. A lot of them are unique. The draining of the batteries, and yeah, that happens. There are things like that are regular, but other more dynamic things are kind of custom, depending upon really what you are doing. And some version of interfering with what you're doing is going to occur. And then it has, over the years, the interference has become much more serious as time gone by. There's tremendous liability concerns, and it's become something that the risk of a living laboratory has become a far than any kind of normal laboratory that ever exists. It's the most unique kind of laboratory that ever exists in any kind of building anywhere on the planet. Even though we've had materializations of things in our aerospace plant, doesn't hold a candle to the Skinwalker Ranch.
Wait, what? He's had materializations happen at the aerospace plant, at Bigelow Aerospace's manufacturing plant. This is an interesting time to take a little segue, and I want to look at a piece that was done by 8 News Now Vegas about, 6 years ago, and they talk about, whoops, that's not what I want to do. Here we go. They talk about that facility. Let's take a look at this.
Company up in North Las Vegas creates what may be the future of space living.
8 News Now reporter Kristen Drummond shows us the latest development from Bigelow Aerospace and the special guest considering it for future mission.
the potential future of space travel.
This is a variant of a B-330, which is an entire space station that gets to space in a single launch.
Bigelow Aerospace staff showed the latest advancement, a compact structure that inflates for astronauts to live in after launch, providing more volume while doing missions in space.
What we are doing is novel. It's really unique.
A huge step forward for the company since developing the Bigelow Expandable Activity Module, or BEAM, for the International Space Station. Originally an experiment 3 years ago to test and validate expandable habitat technology. Now the founder, Robert Bigelow, wants to do more.
We haven't launched any people. We haven't put any people into our structures.
But that changes with this, the B-330, as the I-Team's George Knapp previewed last week.
The life support systems can accommodate 4 people indefinitely, 5 people for many months, 6 people for maybe 8 weeks, something in that order. No other spacecraft is that capable of doing that.
The station has a central core with lab equipment, 2 toilets, 2 galleys, and other features. Roughly 60 people from NASA are evaluating the unit during a 2-week-long ground test at the facility, giving feedback on how to best use the unit and possibly consider it for future missions, including the Moon and Mars.
It's a really interesting program, and we would love to be part of any of that.
Bigelow Aerospace is also looking into the next generation of expandable structures in space. This is Olympus. It's a concept prototype that could be a future of transporting between 30 and 40 people to Mars.
There's a jillion things you could imagine inside this structure.
Continuing to dream big while perfecting deep space travel. Kristen Drummond, 8 News Now.
Is that a stormtrooper in front of this thing? Is that what that is? That looks like. That's so funny. That's hilarious. Look how big this is on the inside. Is this what he was talking about, that mock-up that they did? It must be.
Inside this structure.
Continuing
Yeah. Imagine that.
to dream big.
Imagine being in space inside one of these things. You could build a lot. That's really interesting. So that's what they're up to. Bigelow Aerospace, the B-330, 330 cubic meters of space, expandable habitat, inflatable. Very cool, and definitely on the edge of what's possible with our publicly available technology in space. So he stands to benefit enormously from any inside information, I would imagine, on metamaterials or particular aspects of UAP related research that might apply to his wheelhouse. What do you guys think? Busy chat today. You guys are busy. Somebody asked earlier if, hey, H Torch 1981, Human Torch 1981. Hey, Clint, is Andy ever going to be official night shift crew? You're all official night shift crew. Andy kind of is. Kind of. I mean, he's a friend of the show. You know, I don't know what an official crew person, you know, there's like, it's for love of the game. Right? Like, that's why we're all here. Everybody shows up and we just like doing this stuff and talking about it. So we're all friends here. However we come together, that's what matters. Okay, let's see. We got some people in the general chat on Discord. What is this? Brandon Fugal's Star Wars. That's awesome. Can I share this? Let's see. Somebody in our Discord just posted Cosmic Serpent. So is that an original screenplay? Is that what that is? Star Wars, the screenplay. The Darth Vader mask, is that the original OG mask? And he's got, looks like the Terminator back there. Die Hard poster, Wolfman. That's amazing. This is a great office. Is this his office? And then he's got a suit back here. So whose suit is that? And then is this the security thing from Unbreakable? What? That's crazy. Brandon Fugal, Star Wars nerd. All right, you're going to love this. Hold on. I have to grab something from across the room. 1 second. I've got the screenplay for Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan, right here on my bookshelf. We got a little Star Trek Star Wars thing going on in here today. Oh, hey, NSA, new member. Thanks for joining. Thanks for becoming a member. I appreciate that. You're great. Welcome to the chat. Longtime lurker, too good not to join. That's great. Thanks for being here. Okay, so let's go on. We have another clip to get to, and I want to get to the Boy Scout situation because this was kind of hilarious. I didn't know about this, but this is really kind of fun. And then I want to bounce back to this Tom Campbell thing. Here we go.
Out, and I saw this property as a.
Here we go.
Exactly. At the time, I was on the board of the National Parks Council of the Boy Scouts of America, and was an Eagle Scout, and I saw this property as a beautiful opportunity and location for the scouting program and to inspire the next generations. But I wanted to satisfy my curiosity and to be able to, through the scientific method and through third-party experts, confirm that there really wasn't anything unusual happening on Skinwalker Ranch. And so I did indeed buy it as a skeptic with that in mind. And for the first 6 months, with the exception of some really strange images that were captured by my drone surveyor and security, which I thought could just as well be Lockheed Skunk Works or some other classified program testing within the airspace, I really wasn't convinced that there was anything truly unusual happening on the property. Every time I visited on a monthly basis, those first 6 months, it was a peaceful, pristine, very diverse landscape. And I saw it as potentially a scouting retreat.
Can you imagine? Can you imagine having your paranormal hotel and letting people come in and you having Boy Scout camps there?
Yeah. In retrospect, it's
awesome.
hilarious. It's pretty humorous to think that that's where my mindset was. But I had grown quite skeptical of these topics, even matters of faith. And I felt like everything could be explained by critical thinking and scientific rigor and applying the scientific method. And I was wrong. I ultimately not only moved from being a skeptic to an experiencer, but have now amassed a data set that is, it's compelling. There is nothing like it on the planet. And I would say, if not for the courage and the foundational efforts of Robert Bigelow and his team, we wouldn't be where we're at today. And I think our understanding of our place in the universe, we'd be in a much different position.
Robert had sent me a text a couple of days ago and said, "You think Brandon Fugal would come on our podcast?" I said, "Yeah, I'm pretty sure I know the answer to that." I text Brandon. He's available 5 minutes later for a phone call and agrees, "I'm ready to jump on the plane and come on down here at any point." I would imagine, even though you guys haven't talked a lot in the years since the property was sold, there's some mutual respect there because you both view it as you're stewards of that property. You're not
Right.
owning it. You're not exploiting it. You're stewards and kind of keeping an eye on it and keeping it out of harming other people.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, and Robert has a legacy. This is part of his extraordinary legacy. And we've tried to do our best through our stewardship to carry that forward and conduct a scientific investigation that will hopefully yield insights and inform the public relative to the reality of these things that were talked about in your book decades ago. And so to sit here today, I mean, this is a historic moment. It's often said, we stand on the shoulders of giants. I don't know any private individual on the planet that has had more courage and has invested more in his tenure than Robert Bigelow. And so to have the opportunity to come together in your headquarters and to be able to have a collaborative discussion and compare notes after a decade of
Well,
stewardship.
the feeling is mutual, because what Brandon has undertaken is extraordinary exposure to the general public that we never did. And so the general public has been elevated in their knowledge, thanks to him and the entire show, about things that go bump in the night, and about consciousness and things that are abnormal. So where else on TV are you going to find that kind of information? So he's done all that on his own.
When NIDS was first there, it's like the cone of silence drops over the ranch. There were a couple of newspaper stories that were out, and I think maybe one or two of them had caught your attention and before you bought the property. But when you send your guys on there and they start seeing this stuff for themselves, holy cow, this is true. You kept it quiet. A, for the integrity of what the investigation was, and B, you didn't want to attract a lot of attention,
Right.
and people
Right.
be overrun with it.
Right.
I know that there has been criticism. Brandon, when I first met some of your team members before the show was on the air, they said, well, Bigelow, he won't share any of the data. And I don't know what the data would be, because nothing ever replicates, nothing ever duplicates the same way. You have a ton of experiences, and both of you, your approach has been poke the bear and see what happens. But what you couldn't have published a scientific paper if you wanted to, right? Back then?
We weren't trying to stimulate the performances exactly. We were kind of, if there were a cattle mutilation, I bought Terry Sherman's group of cows, and
Okay. All right. I know this has been a little bit of a stretch. We're letting it run for a little bit, but this is the part I wanted to get to. Listen to what he says next about buying these cows and what they did. And this is crazy. This is a really weird experiment.
the poor things were bait for cattle mutilation. So we could do a necropsy on the animal and understand and maybe somehow learn a lot more about how these occur, because they have happened in every single state in the United States, thousands of these cases. They're the most successful crime that has ever happened. So we did things like that. We set up games in the old homesteads to be acted on. So we did those kinds of things to see. I'm not saying to try to establish a relationship exactly, but to try to get a feel for something that we could engage and get a response back in some kind of way. And the most serious thing would be the mutilation of an animal. That was the most serious thing. And so we had our security people there to keep people out. And that was kind of our thinking.
You had mutilations of cows. You had mutilations of you had dogs that were vaporized when the rancher was there.
Terry did.
Terry did.
Yeah.
There were cats that were mutilated. There were horses that were attacked. There were a lot of animals that were hurt in those days, right?
There were. Then there were also animals that were just
Disappeared.
put into panic because of the balls of light, the balls that were red as I recall, caused a mental disturbance in the animals, horses or cows, and put them into a panic. And I think there was a report where one of those was witnessed over someone's head. It might have been Terry that witnessed it, or maybe one of our people did. And the person, the human, was unaware that the ball was over his head. Terry had an encounter with a teal colored, a ball, a turquoise colored ball that was transparent. And inside was a kind of a liquefied energy form that was causing bolts of light flashing off inside the ball. There was a tremendous amount of energy in that.
Okay, I want to stop here. Isn't that very similar to the description of the object that was shown to, oh my God. All right, help me remember this, guys. It was the guy who was a gate program kid, wound up in some kind of a telepathy research program, and then at some point they bring him into a room, and a couple of guys come in with a case. They put the case down, they open up this case, and inside the case there is this sphere, and he describes it as appearing to be alive, and they're like, oh, it knows who you are. Just ask it a question or talk to it, or you can interact with this thing. Oh my God, the name escapes me right now. Jordan Jozak. Thank you. That was thanks, Lost Reaver Films. Yeah, Jordan Jozak. And it sounds exactly like this, right? I wonder if we've captured something like this. What he's describing, Bigelow. He says that the color of the orb has some correlation with the way that it affects the people that it's interacting with. And he describes one gentleman in particular who's having this experience, who is convinced he's going to die. He is absolutely convinced that he is going to die, and he panics and he just kind of freaks out. And it makes you wonder. It made my first thought when I heard this is that maybe what they're engaging with is some kind of automated deterrence system, a highly advanced, artificially intelligent security system that is capable of spooking people the way that we might have a device that spooks animals in a zoo, right? Like you might have, if you need to move some animals from one place to another, and you need to get them to leave an area or go to another area, or they're about to do something that's either going to get them killed or hurt, or maybe it's going to interfere with something that you're trying to do, then you would have a system that could monitor and loiter in an area and act on individuals depending on what they need to do. Possibly. It's sort of like Patrick Jackson's sphere network hypothesis, but the spheres, the boogospheres, or that I say boogosphere, but the metallic spheres, like the Bet sphere, are part of a multi-layered networked system of artificially intelligent machines that somehow interact with one another through these tight beam transmissions, and they have this coordinated schedule and system that they operate on, and they basically run some kind of a automated grid over the planet, more or less. And according to Jackson's sphere network hypothesis, when in certain areas there are nodes of the network, and if a person is in that area, they will experience poltergeist activity. And according to Patrick, the idea behind that is it is a way of getting people to leave the area before a beam transmission takes place. So if it sends out a tight beam transmission to another sphere, and a human being is standing between those 2 points, and it would get irradiated by this blast of energy. So in those cases where that does happen, that would explain, according to Jackson's hypothesis, spontaneous combustion in certain individuals who were just sitting in a room, and then suddenly they just vaporized. It's because they got hit with this tremendous blast of energy, according to his idea. And I kind of like it. I've got his book. I don't have it where I can grab it. It's behind me over here. But I'd love to have him back on the show, or on the show. I haven't had him on the show yet, but we've exchanged a bunch of emails. So I'm going to see if I can circle back with Patrick and get him on here. But that was really interesting. And then there's another clip in here where Bigelow talks about hiring Joe McMoneagle to remote view the property. And this is at about 36 minutes in. And I'm just going to cue this up. And then before we go there, we're going to look at some of your chats. I had a couple super chats. Darnell Pisco says, Andy McGrillen and Chris Ramsey should have a baby. Good pedigree. Said with Scottish accent. Yeah, that's hilarious. They are funny. They're funny on the show together. It's funny to watch them. I love those guys. It's cool to loop other people in and to have people drop by. And I really, really want to find a way to get more audience interaction into the actual live stream above and beyond just reading comments online. It would be really nice if we could do some kind of like a voicemail. You leave a voice message. I know some people are doing that. I know Chris does something like that. We experimented last week with a video clip. If you record like a 30-second video or a 60-second video and you send it to us, you go to teamnightshift.com and you hit make contact, the make contact button, you'll get an email field. You can fill that out and put a link to your video. And then if it's cool, we'll show it on the live stream on Friday and we'll talk about it. We had some weird comments, not weird, I shouldn't say that, but we had some comments about last Friday's show, and I got a little heat for not reading the super chats until way late in the episode. And for those of you who were there last week, if you were annoyed by that, I do apologize. What happened was we didn't expect Chris to drop in, and when he did, we just got into a flow. And to be perfectly honest, I just dropped the ball. I should have gone through the super chats earlier. So this week, we won't make that mistake, but we got sidetracked a little bit, so I apologize for that, guys. All right, what else? Bring El Cid on. Grelch, that would be interesting. Beth says it was a great show. Thanks, Beth. Appreciate that. Totally cook their brains, you mean? Cook whose brains? Members only Wednesday call-ins, end of show. Human Torch 1981. That would be kind of cool. The members only Wednesday, I started doing it a while ago for just members only chat. And I thought that was really just a nice way to like have a contained live stream in the middle of the week where we could just talk to the members and have a back and forth conversation. But I would love to elevate that a little more. And the super chats are great, but it would be nice to have another dimension to that. So if we can figure something out. Justin says, I can set up the voicemail thing for you. Let's talk. See, Mr. Justin, ladies and gentlemen, can I just say, I have not said this in a long time, and I really do need to say it because it's true. I owe a tremendous, huge thank you to not only Mr. Justin, but to DNITS and to our mod squad, to Wrath of Kant, even to Fawn Universal, to all of our people who are in the Discord and who just help us out with all of this stuff. Mr. Justin has been there for a long time now, and he has come with us to these location things, these destinations. We've gone to Austin, we've gone to California for Contact in the Desert, and the Night Shift family and the Doomer Friday family has sort of grown and just become more and more of a tight little group, and it's really, really amazing. I think over the last couple of months, we've all gotten a little, I'm not talking about the Night Shift family internally, I'm just saying generally across, like, I don't know, all the people I've talked to, gotten a little burnout on the UFO topic because we've been on it for so hard for so long, and sometimes you have to take a little bit of a break. But I think it's just important to mention that all these folks, everybody who has been with us since the very beginning and who volunteers their time to just be a part of what we're doing and help out. I I wish there was a way I could thank you more. I wish I could figure that out. I wish I had some kind of like, I want this show to be bigger than it is, and I want to grow it into a thing that I can picture in my mind, and I have a strategy to get there. But I'm always, and this is just between us because it's members only Thursday. I'm always frustrated that I can't get there faster, right? Like I'm bootstrapping this whole thing, and to get it to where it is now, it couldn't have happened without everybody that's helped out along the way. So that is the truest statement I can make. And I truly do appreciate all of the help, and from everybody who's just hung out and contributed. If you're a member and you support the channel, if you throw in $1 or $2 a month to help keep us afloat and keep the lights on, that's everything. I made a decision a while ago that I was going to go full time on night shift. And I didn't have to do that. I wanted to do it. I wanted to do it because I wanted to change. I wanted something that would let me be creative and let me do have interesting conversations with fascinating people that are smarter than I am. And I think that's really my main motivation. Obviously UFOs too. Interested in getting to the bottom of that as much as anyone. But making that actual leap and going from doing a few other things most of the time to doing this most of the time, and then kind of backburnering other stuff, it's an adjustment, and learning how to keep iterating and improving and figuring out as you go, and also maintaining a content tempo where if you stop producing, the channel stagnates and then nothing happens, and that's a real problem. That's a lot. It takes a lot of work. And so I want you guys to know, I appreciate the fact that you are patient with the channel, you're patient with me, that you keep coming back and hanging out and having these chats together. But the number one compliment we always get from every guest that's ever been on the show is that the audience and the community here are top-notch, phenomenal, amazing people, and you guys are great. So please keep it up. Thanks for coming to my TED Talk. Justin Cook says, love you guys. Got to go to court. See you tomorrow. Good luck in court. Hope that goes well. Grelch, thanks for the super chat. You guys do it the correct way. It's a space to exchange ideas and stories without all the rage and BS. I dig it. Thank you. Right? That's what we're after. I think no one has all the answers, and the people who get really hooked and married into an opinion and then get kind of like confrontational about defending their viewpoint, I appreciate the passion. I find that exciting, and I think that that's what energizes the topic, right? People who are passionate about this subject in general and have their own idea of what may be going on, but none of us really know. And I find that a lot of the back and forth on Twitter, for example, and a lot of the just like sniping and shittiness to, back and forth between various groups, it's not constructive. It's not, it doesn't solve any, it gets us no closer to any answers. And it has historically been one of the biggest problems in the UFO community, is just the shittiness that goes back and forth in some of these groups or people. And I'm not picking on any one individual person or any group. I'm just saying that you'll see it if you spend enough time there. You'll see people just being dicks to each other, and I just think it's unnecessary. And I would rather, if I'm going to do this all the time and spend my days thinking about all this, I'd rather be surrounded by people who are cool and want to just hang out and talk about all of the weirdness, because it's fascinating. And ultimately, as much as the joke is that we're kind of a doomy group and we get a little, a little doomy on Fridays, I think deep down inside, most of us, and I certainly would count myself among this group, are optimistic or hopeful. Or maybe hopeful is the better word. Hopeful that we can pull out of a fucked up situation as humanity and maybe transition into something better. And I think that what maybe binds this audience together and this community together, particularly in the Night Shift family, is a hopefulness about the future, that if this moment can offer anything to us, the moment of disclosure or the moment of coming to a clearer understanding of our place in the universe, it offers us an opportunity to pause, assess, reassess, and choose a better way forward. That's my hope. I hope that's your hope as well. I'm not naive about it. I think it's a very complicated issue. We obviously have really complicated geopolitics at play. There's the military dynamic. There's all kinds of layers to this thing that I can't see, and I don't feel qualified to opine on. Anything I say on this channel is just my opinion. I don't have any information that the rest of you don't have. If I got anything that I can offer, it's a space for this conversation to happen. And I'm just as curious as all of you are as to what the fuck's going on. But I think asking the questions is the first step, right? You've got to get excited about the topic enough to start asking the right questions. You just think about what those questions are. What should we be asking? And who's really responsible for what? How do you peel this onion? Toxic Fart says, thanks for this channel. Love your opinions, views, Clint rules. Thanks, man. Appreciate that. Okay, so let's go back to this next Bigelow clip. And if you're watching and you haven't already, please do me a favor and hit that like button. We have got almost coming up on 350, almost 400 people, depending. And if each of you hit the like button once, think about what that can mean for all of us.
Had hired a world-class remote viewer named Joe McMoneagle on 2 occasions to remote view the ranch. And his results were tempting for me to do certain things to explore, but I never did them.
He identified places where hey, you should look here, or something bad.
It was a blinded study. I knew about it, so it wasn't double blind, but he was blinded. So he had a longitude, latitude instructions in a sealed envelope that he couldn't open. But the sealed envelope was on the desk, and that's all he had to go on. And he drew and described, he nailed the ranch both times. I did it twice to reinforce the potential accuracy. And what was really interesting was after he did it all, and I said, what else are you feeling? Because remote viewing isn't just about geography. What else do you sense? And he says, there's a lot of activity going on underground, a lot of it. I see things in motions, machinery, beings of some kind, don't know exactly, but there's a lot going on. And this was in the meadow area, not under the mesa, the ridge line, the mesa. But it was in the meadow areas, and so I briefly thought for maybe 10 minutes on should I go do that, and I decided no, I'm not gonna really go and disturb that. What
Joe McMoneagle is one of the best remote viewers there is. Okay, Joe McMoneagle. Here's his profile on the Monroe Institute webpage. And I'll just read this so you guys know who Bigelow's talking about. Joe McMoneagle, internationally renowned as a master remote viewer and author of 4 books on remote viewing, has 47 years of professional and scientific expertise in research and development within numerous multi-level technical intelligence collection systems and in the field of paranormal and the social sciences. He was an R&D consultant to SRI International and Science Applications International Corporation, SAIC, where he participated in protocol design, statistical information collection, evaluations, thousands of remote viewing trials in support of both experimental research as well as active intelligence operations for what is now known as Project Stargate. Joe is the co-owner of Intuitive Intelligence Applications, Inc., which provides support to multiple research facilities and corporations with a full range of collection applications using anomalous cognition, AC, in the production of original and cutting-edge information. He has also successfully demonstrated his abilities as a psychic and remote viewer under strict scientific control in various labs and on national television networks in 6 countries, to include National Geographic, Discovery Channel, BBC, ABC, CBS, NBC, Fox, Channel 4 England, and Nippon and Asahi TV in Japan. Well-versed with developmental theory, methods of application, and current training technologies for remote viewing, Joe now shares his expertise by facilitating Monroe's remote viewing 1 and 2 programs. He trains participants to acquire and describe information seemingly separated from the viewer and his or her physical senses by distance, shielding, and or time. It is Joe's goal to ensure that when participants leave the program, they will have a much deeper understanding for what remote viewing is, and a very large percentage of those attending will walk away knowing that they had remote viewed under double-blind conditions and have the tools to do so in the future. You can take a class with Joe McMoneagle at the Monroe Institute, and he is one of the best in the world. And according to Joe McMoneagle, hired by Bobby Bigelow, he remote views Skinwalker Ranch, and beneath the ranch, he describes machinery, people moving around, things going on, beings of some kind. It sounds eerily similar to Ingo Swann's description of what he saw when he remote viewed beneath the surface of the moon. And that is what made me think that maybe the orbs that they're seeing on the property have something to do with some kind of automated defense network, like a Scooby-Doo system, right? Like a Scooby-Doo defense system. So you're walking too close to the entrance to a deep underground facility where some thing is going on. So the Scooby-Doo defense system holographic emitter fires up a fucking werewolf, and a werewolf walks out. You see what you believe is a werewolf. You think it's real. You freak out. You leave the area, and that's it. Or there's something else more complicated going on there, and maybe it's some kind of, there's a soft spot in the membrane between parallel worlds, and there's some kind of overlap, and sometimes beings are able to pass through that membrane, and time behaves differently in some areas. But either way, Joe McMoneagle, as a remote viewer, is serious enough of an RV expert that if I were Bigelow and he told me there was a bunch of stuff underneath the ranch, I would at the very least hire, 10 more remote viewers to do the exact same. I'd run it as many more times as I could. And then I would see if they all see the same thing. And if they do, that's when you have to decide, do you try to dig? How deep is this? Like, what's under there? How far down do you have to go? Is it some kind of ET underground facility and there's some kind of weird Scooby-Doo system operating on the surface? Stephen Daedalus, OMG, Clint, you are so right. Instagram or even YouTube have sometimes so much tension, personal hate. This is crazy and kills peace of mind for sure. How can people get angry and argue and fight over shit that is so amazing it may as well just be a movie? It's like arguing over Star Wars or fighting over an episode of Star Trek. It's so silly, right? Like whatever is going to happen, whatever is happening, we know what we know. We're finding out more every day. Eventually, we'll look back on this moment and we'll think how silly it was, how little we knew, how far we've come. The answers will happen in time. In the meantime, we're all pretty much on the same team. Beth Noyes says there have been plants in the UFO groups for decades. They want to derail the truth. I agree. I think at the very least they want us to argue and fight amongst ourselves, and turn it, if they could turn it into a personality thing, then I think that's advantageous. It's the same thing that they do with any other sensitive subject. They fuel the fire on both sides, And they have agent provocateurs who get involved and stir shit up just to see what it smells like. And, you know, but it requires engagement from us to be effective, right? If you don't engage, then there's no target. T-Bone 7698 says, tomorrow I'd love it if you all gave your opinions on who in the UFO space you think might/could be disinformation agents. Oh, I can't do that. That's not a good idea. I can't do that. I don't think anybody's going to do that. The reason is because I don't honestly know, and I don't think any of us really do. I have my suspicions, and I have suspicions of a lot of things in this space, right? Last week, I think it was Xander who said that there are times where he's like, I don't want to put words in his mouth, but at times where he's like, I don't know if the whole thing could be a psyop. I have certainly felt that way. I think we all do from time to time, because the questions we're asking are so massive that there's really no one answer that's going to cover it all. And any information we get is so piecemeal. And so when you say like, okay, NHI is already here and it's been here for a long time. Okay, great. Well, that's the most vague thing ever. It doesn't really take us anywhere. How many types of NHI? Are you counting artificial intelligence? Are you counting, orbs and UFO flying discs in the same category? Are we talking about the same thing? Are the little grays that appear in abduction accounts that are wearing little uniforms, they have little jumpsuits on, is that the same as what's happening at Skinwalker with a direwolf that appears and then disappears? I don't know. One way that it ties together for me is if you had a really advanced type of technology that could interact with consciousness, and you wanted to scare a bunch of humans and keep them under control and kind of keep them dumb and stupid, then you could put on a really elaborate light show for them, and you could make them think all kinds of things. And maybe to some extent, some of what we're seeing is that, right? Making you think you're seeing something that is not actually there to get you to behave in a way that is beneficial to whoever. So that's one layer of it. But then there's the next layer, which is if you think about how dastardly our own intelligence services behave, right, from time to time. Like think about MK Ultra and think about what they might be doing now. It's entirely possible that some of these could be human technologies that they're using on people. There was they talked about it years ago. It was called the Voice of God weapon. I don't know if any of you remember this, but the Voice of God weapon was supposedly they discontinued it. I don't believe that, but it was discussed. The first time I remember it being discussed was during the first Gulf War in the early 1990s. And the idea was that it could create a hologram that would fool people into thinking they were seeing a god or an angel, and it could put a voice directly into your head that would say whatever the operator wanted it to say. And the idea was that this weapon could be deployed over Iraqi troops in the field. At the time, this was how it was pitched. And you could possibly encourage them to surrender en masse, right? Or you could get them to lose the will to fight. Or you could convince them that you had manifested some kind of being that could threaten them. And it was all based on this sort of mind war concept, psychological warfare thing. And then a few years ago, there was another test that was done of a plasma. They had an array set up where they had two lasers that would come together, and wherever they would intersect, you would get some kind of a little ball of plasma that could project sound, and it would float around, and it could go around a room, and it could talk. You could speak into a microphone, and like a speaker, it would come out the other end of this little ball of light. And that's real research that's happening. And then you have people who have testified on Capitol Hill about the Havana syndrome technology. And there were a group of Intel guys that were testifying in front of Congress. It was on C-SPAN a few months ago. And they talked about how one of the key features of Havana syndrome technology is that it can make you think you're going insane. It can create voices in your ear, voices in your head. Only you can hear them. They can talk to you. They can tell you all kinds of crazy things. And so we know that this is a real thing and it's been deployed. And then not even more recently than that, there was discussion about this Russian device that was acquired by American intelligence agents that was some type of a small enough device that you could put it in a bag and you could take it into a room and they could deploy it. And then it would basically produce Havana syndrome effects on people within a small space. And they had footage of this device supposedly being used on security cameras in somewhere in the Middle East. And it was in a cafe. And they had they had the security camera in the cafe, and they showed some people. They were all just sitting around a little space, and a person walks in with a bag. They sit down, and as soon as they sit down, within a few seconds, you see a bunch of other people in the room kind of have a little moment, and then they get up and they leave, and they're all disoriented. Is that real? Is that really the story, or is that the story they just want us to know? I don't know if anybody else out there caught those, but those are just some really weird little side quests that happened recently, and they were very interesting. Jacques Vallée once said that the CIA was thinking about projecting a giant Jesus hologram above Cuba to create a mass religious crazy event on the population, I think as soon as the 1970s. Vietnam War, the U.S. military launched a psychological operations campaign called Operation Wandering Soul, which weaponized audio recordings of actors posing as the dead relatives of fallen comrades. Jesus Christ, that's horrifying. Tom Campbell had an amazing interview on Mayim Bialik's Breakdown Part 2. He talks about Chris Bledsoe, aliens, crop circles, etc. It's all designed to wake us up to the limitless possibilities. That is a great segue. Voice to skull technology. Beth Noyce says the questions aren't big enough, in my opinion. They've hidden stuff for nearly a century. There should be healing for all diseases now and so much more. Selfish breakaway black ops. Oh, this is okay. Good. Thanks for this answer. Cosmic Serpent says Brandon seemed to hint at the end, at the Italian. Okay, he seemed to hint that the Italian research team who conducted scans of Egypt's pyramids using SAR data, synthetic aperture radar, will come to Skinwalker Ranch. It will be interesting. That is awesome. That's what I wanted to know. If that group could come to Skinwalker Ranch and do a deep ground scan and see anything, that would be very, very interesting. Darnell Pisco. Clint is not lying about the quality and comfort of the night shift shirts. They are phenomenal. Thanks, man. Appreciate that. They are phenomenal. I love them. Okay, so Mayim Bialik did this great episode with Tom Campbell, and we are going to go there. But before we do, I have one more clip I want to do with Bigelow, this direwolf clip. I think you guys are going to find this interesting. He talks about, where is it? It's at the end, towards the very end of the episode. And there's a cool Robbie Williams story. Oh, here we go. The dire wolf. check this out. Listen to this story. This one really left me shook, if I could say that.
We took samples, even though the guys were down there.
Yeah.
And that's something that we actually investigated the last few years for the first time. We actually took instrumentation down there to probe the area, especially because of some of the history with, the Sherman's dogs retreating down that way. We had the reports of large wolf-like creatures that would actually exit, the area of the homesteads and go down toward the creek, and were never seen again. And of course, you know what happened when we went down to explore Dry Gulch Creek.
You found one.
We found the carcass, the decomposing carcass of an unusually large wolf-like creature. And the teeth, in particular, the jawbone, the teeth were very, very unusual. And we took samples, even though the guys were gagging. I mean, it was covered with maggots and decomposing there in the water right on the edge of the creek. Thank goodness. I mean, they had the presence of mind to take a sample, to cut off a piece of its jaw and to be able to bag it. They had Ziploc bags with them and put it in a protective bag to have it analyzed. And when we had our biologist, Ben Woodruff, analyze it, he was shocked to find out that the direct match, I mean, we're talking direct match to this jawbone, was an over 10,000-year-old extinct direwolf. And he was stunned. We were stunned. But what it did, George, is it actually added absolute validity to what many people believe to be fantastical accounts of large wolf-like creatures that were impervious to gunshots.
Yeah.
The history that you documented with the Shermans, a lot of people understandably have dismissed, and they felt like it was not only not credible, but that it just sounded like just tall tales. Well, to actually recover biology on that property that points toward it being true is one of the many, I think, validating and gratifying parts of our investigation.
So I've got this clip from the show, and this is from season 6, episode 5 of Skinwalker Ranch. And they're talking about, I don't know how many seconds I could share before they...
Close to where the wolf was. Well, look right there on the bank. What's that brown stuff right there? Yeah, some scat. Hey, we ought to get Ben to tell us what that is.
Hey, Ben, it's Caleb. You copy?
Yeah, Caleb.
All right, let's see. I don't want to get dinged for their music.
Then we crossed into the bubble from the southern boundary. Biologist Ben Woodruff.
Ben Woodruff. I just want to see the jaw.
Digestive system then is normal for any predator in the area, and it killed and ate a coyote.
But what could that be like? I mean, it could be a cougar or a mountain lion.
No, a cougar would kill a coyote, but it would not eat one. Mountain lion's digestive system is not meant to break down the bones of larger animals. You would still have bone fragments. Whatever this is has a much more powerfully digestive enzymes in its stomach.
So,
whoa. There you go, guys. I don't know how I feel about the show. I feel like the reality show aspect kind of just cheapens the whole thing. How do you guys feel? Very interesting, though. I like this interview. I like watching Brandon and Bobby Bigelow sit down with George Knapp and hang out and talk. And I'm really enjoying the format of George and Bob having these conversations. I'm curious what you guys think. If you think that, do these guys constitute gatekeepers, you know. I guess Bigelow more than Fugal. Fugal is invested in the space though, and I don't know, where do they fit into this all for you? I'm curious. I'm excited that they're studying all of this though. I think that's fascinating. Travis and Jay Stratton band. They have a band? Is that right? Maybe a direwolf carcass appeared in an area where the permafrost has melted and it was placed on the ranch to mess with Brandon's team. That's interesting. He owns, okay, Dana says he owns the company that genetically recreated the dire wolf. Is that true? What do you mean they genetically recreated it? Subsequent DNA analysis on the creature's remains revealed a genetic breakdown consisting of roughly 11% Greenland wolf and 89% an unidentified or unknown wolf species profile. That sounds less conclusive than just direwolf. He talks about it on Jesse Michaels. Okay. Colossal biotech. Very interesting. MIB or babysitters to the cryptids. Okay, let's change gears. I want to go to Mayim Bialik's interview with Tom Campbell, which just went up very, very recently. I think yesterday or maybe the day before. Check this out and let's take a listen. This is Thomas Campbell. If you're not familiar with him, he wrote a series of books about his, what he calls his theory of everything, his big theory of everything, or my big toe. And his concept is basically that we live in a holographic simulated video game type of a universe. That not exactly, but more or less that's what's going on. And he has a pretty good argument that supports that. And if you haven't ever seen his work or read his book or seen any interviews with Tom, this is a great place to start. And very interesting. And I also just love the way Mayim Bialik asks questions because they're very just regular people questions. Check this out.
Conversation with Dr. Thomas Campbell. Break it down. We recently spoke to D.W. Pasulka and we spoke to Chris Bledsoe. And I'm very interested in, some of the more modern stories, right? That we have and that we are using to try and identify extraordinary experiences. And one of the things that Dr. Pasulka talked about with us is this notion, and I'm not saying this is her idea. Jeffrey Kripal also has talked about it with us. This notion that we have the ability to be in contact with things outside of our senses, right? And that is part of the wiring, right? It's part of the system. But some of the things that people put names to are their best abilities, given the cultural construct they come from, given, but this notion, and some of our biblical texts, right? There's some of the oldest of their kind that at least have existed for thousands of years, right? I'll just leave it at that. That's the simplest way about it. A lot of the prophetic visions, right? The visions that were described, let's say, by the prophets, in many cases share a lot of similarities with a lot of the experiences that people who are not prophets are going through. And, the question is, are UAPs, reports of alien abductions, reports of contact with things outside of our realm of understanding, are these extensions of what thousands of years ago would be described as angels, seraphs, cherubs, beings of light, impossible imaginations. Are aliens the new angels? And what does that mean for our larger understanding of what we're actually getting in touch with?
The one word answer is yes. There's a connection there. The alien, things that are going on, it's kind of been building to a crescendo, and I can explain why. But we have to start with the idea that that we are here to evolve toward love, right? And as a species, we haven't been doing real well. We've been around for like 200,000 years, and it's been control, power, force, warlord mentality. We organize ourselves based on power and force. So that's the way it's been. Now, if you look at the last 5 centuries, you can see that each century we're doing a little better. In the next century, we're doing a little better, just in general, a little more considerate of others, a little kinder, a little less violent,
less pestilence and death.
Yeah, we're doing better. We are evolving toward becoming love, but in tiny little steps. Okay, now at this time, we have a possibility to take some really big steps. Now, when the Buddha was doing his teaching, he could get up on a rock, he could talk as loud as he could, and maybe 100 people would crowd in, could hear him. That's it. Today, the megaphone is a lot bigger. Today, somebody says something that catches attention, and 1 billion people will hear it in 24 hours.
And none of them will even try and verify it. They'll just take it as true.
They'll just take it as true, of course. So we have lots of potential now for change than we had before. And that potential for change means changes are coming, and they're coming faster. If this is time going this way, and this is us evolving, becoming love going this way, it's been pretty flat for a long time. But now it's starting to go like this. And we have this opportunity on the knee of this curve to do that. We can make some big steps forward rather than these tiny little steps that we've been making, because we have the communications. There's always been lots of places all over the world, there's been people who really understood the nature of reality. It's just, people get it because all you need to do is be aware, open yourself, understand, how reality works. Now, they all say it in different words. The Buddha said that this physical world was an illusion. Well, I say it's a virtual reality. There really isn't much difference there. And if you go back through all the mystical schools, you go to Kabbalah, you go to Gnostics, you go to the whirling dervishes, you go through all the mystery schools, you see they have very similar ideas.
Plato as well.
Yeah, they have very similar ideas as the way reality works. And in general, they were right. That is the way reality works. But those little bubbles of enlightenment stay little bubbles, and they stay in the margins. And they will, because they're not connected. So today we have this great connection, and people are growing up. Today, if there's a big disastrous earthquake or tidal wave someplace in the world, everybody knows about it as it happens. And a lot of people dig in their pocket and send money to the Red Cross or the White Cross or some other organization that's helping over there. Because now, instead of, where was that? Sri Lanka, where's that? Never heard of it. Oh, well, too bad for them. It wasn't connected. Now it's not like that. Up close and personal, you'll see you see the child that lost its parents. You see the parents that lost their child. You see the destruction. You'll see the people huddling up, trying to stay warm or whatever it is. People connect to that. So now when you have that big disaster, there are people, not everyone, but there are people all over the planet that have empathy, that care about those people. Some of them will dig in their pocket to see if they can help. Some of them will get on an airplane and fly there and help. You see, that we didn't have that before. We have this shrinking of the world. It was this big place, and there were people all over that we just didn't know about and didn't care about. They were outside of our reality. Now they're a part of our reality.
This is huge, and it's so true. Such a good point. Tom Campbell, not Bobby Monroe, or Bobby Bigelow. Sorry, I'm all over the place. Tom studied with and worked for Monroe at the Monroe Institute, and the Monroe Institute in its early days was doing a lot of experimentation on out-of-body experiences, and Bob Monroe was teaching people how to do these out-of-bodies. And Campbell was one of the subjects or one of the folks that worked with him. And they would put him and others in these acoustically isolated, separate rooms and have them do out-of-body astral projection. And one very interesting story he's going to tell in this, and I don't think we'll have time to go to it today, but you should watch this whole interview because it's in there and it's great, is he talks about how the moment that he realized this was the way the universe worked fundamentally, this whole idea of an illusion or a simulation, was during an experimental run where they had him and another person do an out-of-body astral projection together. And Monroe tasked them with staying together. They could go wherever they wanted to go, but they had to stay together while they were in an out-of-body, having an out-of-body experience. And the two gentlemen were separated. They were each in an isolated room, acoustically completely separated from one another. So it was a soundproof booth on different sides of the building, rooms apart. And they are each being recorded. And then afterwards, when it's all over, they do a debrief and they talk about what they saw and what they described, and they play their recordings back and they look at the data. And it turns out that they were going to the same places, seeing the same things, having the same experiences. And Campbell comes back from that experience with this realization that then, therefore, there is no such thing as the physical universe, right? This is all information. And so you have these if everything is fundamentally information, how would the rules of a system like that work? And what would need to be true to make all of this make sense? He himself is a physicist, and so approached this with a level of scientific rigor that made it possible for him to write this book in a way that explains very clearly his thinking and his logic behind all this. And I have to say, as far as I've been able to tell, it's very consistent. And his whole idea is basically that we're in this simulation. The illusion of matter is, matter is an illusion. Space is an illusion. You look around and you experience your life as if you are a person sitting in a room or standing outside or whatever it is you're doing. But what's actually happening is you are a field of consciousness that exists inside of a soup of information. And because there is no such thing as space or time, your consciousness can actually interact with that information, and you can go somewhere else and see things that aren't here with just your consciousness. Even though, as you watch this video, you're sitting here in a physical body and you are aware of the limitations of your body, where it starts and stops, and the space in the room that you're in. At the same time you are in this space, you are also existing in these higher dimensional realms, right? The multi-dimensional self still has realness in these other planes. And so your consciousness overlaps all of those different planes. Your physical body is limited to this three-dimensional plane. And that's why when you meditate, you unlock the door and you open the door to all of this other information field that exists, because now you're detaching from the physical, and the consciousness, your consciousness, can drift into these other layers of reality and pick up impressions and information and then bring those things back. And then you can act on that information. And to some extent, that's what remote viewing is doing. And out of body astral projection does it, but does it differently with a different set of techniques and a different set of results. So you can remote view something where your consciousness is picking up information about something that is separated from you in time and space. And you can accurately draw pictures of what you're experiencing. You can draw diagrams, you can draw maps, you can read things. Some people can read numbers, some people can read text, some people can get different types of impressions that they can translate into pictograms or some type of a notes that you'll see remote viewers do when they do these RV sessions. And then astral projection or out of body, you can actually go out of body, send your consciousness to another location. I use quotes because we're really not talking about physically going somewhere, but the impression is that you are in another space and you're able to explore the space, right? Like you can move around a room. You can go from the floor to the ceiling. You can go from one room into another room through a wall, or through the floor up into the next room, or you can go from a house to, an airport 20 miles away to a library on the other side of the planet to a small pond somewhere in Skokie, Illinois. And it's instantaneous because it's all one big information field. So Campbell's whole thesis is this, and he explains it in a way that is really clean, clear, logical, consistent, and he did an amazing interview, not only this one on The Breakdown with Mayim Bialik, but he did one on Kurt Jaimungal's channel, Theories of Everything. It's about 4 years ago or 3 years ago, and I highly recommend that one too. I don't have a link for it, but if you go to Kurt's channel and you look at Thomas Campbell, you'll see. It'll pop up there. Okay. Last super chat, Darnell Pisco, 7473. Thanks for the super chat. Why don't the Greys abduct Stephen Greer? Take back one of their own. The ER doctor could help them with human body investigations. It's a great question. I don't know what the story is with Stephen Greer. This is one of those people that I don't know, right? I'm not sure how to feel about Stephen Greer. I could tell you honestly what I feel about the history around Stephen Greer, and that is this. When he hit the scene and started publishing interviews with UFO whistleblowers, at that time, there was no YouTube, and he was the only person. It was him and Project Camelot, and I don't know if anybody else was really doing it at that time. They were recording sit-down, one-on-one interviews with UFO whistleblowers at a time that no one else was doing this, when there was no social media and there was no YouTube. And those early videos are a treasure trove, in my view, because at the time, people didn't know where this was going to go. They didn't know that it was going to be seen by a wide audience all over the world and that it would be accessible. It was just a video interview they were recording with Stephen Greer in a room somewhere in the late 1990s. Or in the early 2000s, right? So the mindset of the person sitting in the chair wasn't, I'm going on a podcast and I'm going to speak and tens or hundreds of thousands of people or millions of people are going to hear everything I'm saying and then make their own call. It was, I'm meeting with Stephen Greer in this conference room, wherever. We're going to do an interview and he's going to ask me questions and there's a camera. And if you're a person sitting in the year 2000 doing that, your mindset is like, I'm just doing this chat. You're not thinking about YouTube. We're still 6 years away from YouTube. There is no, there's just none of this infrastructure. So the types of things that you say are going to be different. The way that you say them, the honesty, there's a level of honesty and body language that I think is like, you might not find today because the intended audience was just different at that time. So my point is that Stephen Greer in those early days, and to a large degree Project Camelot, and those early interviews represent a time capsule of a very particular window in ufology's history where it was possible to sit down and start having one-on-one conversations, in-depth, long-form discussions with whistleblowers from deep inside some of these weird programs and related groups. But it was early enough that the idea that this would be some kind of like widely available interview just wasn't on anyone's real radar, I don't think. And so in that early window, when Greer hits the scene and starts talking, he does a presentation at the National Press Club. He shows all of these, clips from people that he's talked to. And that's when we start hearing all of the stuff about Werner von Braun and the whole Project Bluebeam thing. That's fascinating. And that's in terms of just like looking back at the history of ufology and finding that period just fascinating in and of itself. Whether or not what the people are saying in these interviews turns out to be 100% accurate or true, separate issue. Just watching all that stuff is fascinating for me. Like somebody who is really into, I don't know, whatever you're into. If you're a fan of, I'm just a fan of this. And I think that was really interesting. Later on, we get into Stephen Greer, the very successful ufology guy, who is now, going on to say, I am the sole expert. I'm the only person that has any real information. Anyone else who you talk to is lying to you. Anyone who tells you anything else is questionable. You can only trust me. When Stephen Greer gets to that point, I check out. And I can't go any further with this guy. It's just too far for me. I don't know how anybody can have that kind of confidence. It's been my experience that people who are that confident are full of shit. And so does that mean everything Stephen Greer says is bullshit? No. It just means that he's very confident in his opinion, and that's a data point. He's also extremely successful, and financially, he's doing better than anybody else in the ufology space, as far as I could tell, at least in terms of making a living off of UFOs. This guy's doing great. What does all that mean? I don't know. These are data points, though, and I find them interesting. Sorry for that rant, but Stephen Greer is a complicated one. It's also interesting that he exists so far outside of the mainstream ufology discussion these days, and at one time he was the mainstream of ufology discussion, and now we've moved so far away that you'll notice that when Stephen Greer does interviews, he's talking to people that are almost like they're outside of the big. There's a circle of influencers and podcasters in this space, and we all kind of know who they are, and then there's this like everybody outside of that circle. That seems to be where Stephen Greer spends his time. He did an interview with Kurt Jaimungal on Theories of Everything, and Kurt wouldn't let Greer monopolize the conversation. And Kurt is one of the things that I love about him and his channel is that he asks really targeted, straight, serious questions, and he doesn't care if the person isn't interested in answering them. He'll just ask because they're obvious questions. And he puts it to Stephen Greer throughout this interview over and over again. And you can see Greer get noticeably miffed that he can't just steamroll this guy. And if you watch Greer in other interviews, he steamrolls people. They ask him a specific question about one thing, and then suddenly he's off on this 35-minute rant about some whatever. And Kurt just doesn't let him get away with that. And that I found to be one of the most entertaining interviews that he's ever done, because you get to see like this guy's, he gets irritated at that. And I think that that's an interesting data point. Oh, huge news. Magic Russ, thanks for this update. Andy from That UFO Podcast has announced that he's going full-time on his channel, giving up his day job. Good luck to him. Go, Andy. Great job. That's awesome. We were just talking about that, weren't we? Beginning of the show. Stephen Daedalus says, yes, Tompkins says some fascinating stuff, but so hard to be sure what is true and what is BS. Watched again lately, Phil Schneider talking, fascinating, but how to be sure too. Kurt's great. Greer is complicated. He's divisive, but historically important. I think it could be just that simple with Greer, that he is a complicated guy, and maybe he's just abrasive. Some people are just like that. Maybe when you're around him, he's a different person. I don't get that impression, but maybe that's the case. I don't know. But he seems to be a little abrasive, and that after a while, people just get tired of that. Maybe that's all that it is. Linda Moulton Howe, yeah, same thing. Linda Moulton Howe got frustrated. I like it when he pissed off Linda Howe. Very funny, Mr. Data's head. She's interesting too, Linda, because it's the same thing, right? It's this weird time capsule. If you go back and you just want to have a fun 2-3 hours, listen to the old Coast to Coast AM episodes with Linda, where she calls in and she's just talking to, is it George? No, it's not George. It was, who was she talking to on the episode that I'm trying to think of here? Art Bell. I think it was an Art Bell one. And she's talking about all these people who send her stuff, and she's like, I've got a letter from a Navy SEAL who was a security guy at Area 51, and this is what it said. And then she'll go into this crazy story. And it just, it seems like it never occurs to her to stop and go like, this is just too fucking insane. There's no way. She just keeps going and telling these stories. So just to listen to someone tell an interesting story, she's one of the best. But that was an interesting interview with her and Kurt. Robert says, did you hear the podcast that a Navy SEAL was on and claimed that Greer had demons in his house as his warriors? No, that sounds insane. That's crazy. Linda was ready to throw down. Yeah, you guys are pretty hot on the Stephen Greer thing in the chat. This is interesting. I'm reading the chat right now. This is kind of... How do you guys feel about Linda? Curious. She told a story about a guy in Peru who went through a Stargate. He traveled through a portal. And he somehow figured out the right frequency of sound to hum near this stone portal near Lake Titicaca. And he put his forehead on this stone and he hums the right sound combination, or the combination of sounds that he has to unlock this thing. Somehow he figures this out. It's acoustically activated. It's some kind of crystalline structure in the rock. This is according to Linda. And he hits these notes, and when he does it in sequence, it's like something out of The Legend of Zelda. Like, it opens this gateway. He wakes up in a room, in a completely white room that is apparently infinitely big, and he hears this voice talking to him, and it's someone that he describes it as, it sounded like a guy in a control booth who was confused. This is the weirdest story. And he goes, who are you? Why are you here? What are you doing here? How'd you get here? And the guy is like, I don't know. I was just standing next to a rock. I don't know how I got here. Who are you? Where am I? And they go have this back and forth, and they're both equally confused. And then the guy, the disembodied voice that's coming from somewhere that sounds like he's in a control room, just says, okay, let me figure this out. I'll get you back to where you need to go. And then the guy wakes up and he's back where he started. And this is some story that she told. And I was like, oh my God, this is the craziest shit I've ever heard. But who knows? Peru is a magical and mystical place full of wonder and sorcery. Linda looks like she was a what? Well, she was in her 20s and 30s. Yeah, Linda was a smoke show. Jerry Willis Beth, you know who I'm talking about. Jerry, the guy who did that is Jerry Willis. I know him. Check him out. Is he like 7 feet tall? He's like a big guy, right? He's a really tall guy. And I think Linda Howe had a bit of old person get off my lawn energy, which Greer also has. If I'm being gracious, I can see them both just being over dealing with people not already on board with them. Yeah, probably. There's a little bit of that. Toxic says Linda Moulton Howe is like Jaime Maussan in I like them both, but they are so convinced that they believe everybody's story. Yeah. I mean, I don't know about Linda believing everybody's story. I don't know much about Jaime. I know that because I don't follow him. I know that people get polarized about him. But the thing, it's not that believing a story is one thing, right? Like if someone tells you a story, right, and it's convincing enough to you and you buy it, and you not fall for it, but you buy into it, right? Like for me, the Dan Burrish story is fascinating. I love it. Why do I love it? Because it sounds like a movie. It's like a science. It's an amazing 5-season arc for an HBO series. Okay, guy, young kid, has an alien abduction experience with his grandfather. He's playing catch. They're just out there playing a little baseball at the park with grandpa, and this shadow moves over the park, and suddenly the grandfather wakes up and he's near a tree and he's on the ground and he doesn't know what happened. So there's some missing time, and Dan has had this abduction experience. He's had missing time. They're both confused. They don't know what's going on. And then suddenly, right after this happens, Burrish goes into this period where he falls in love with science. He becomes a biology nerd. He just completely changes his personality, becomes this super into science and just very geeky. And he winds up joining the Los Angeles Microscopic Society. And he goes there. His mom introduces him. She finds a biologist that he can sort of apprentice with or mentor with, and they get him into this group. And he goes into this their meetings, and they bring him on board, and they start showing this young kid. They're like, oh, look at all this cool stuff. And these old biologist guys are talking. And then one day he gets recruited, or he gets approached in his lab, and these guys come in, 2 uniforms and a suit, he says. And they say, would you like to see the world? You want to see some pretty amazing things and do things that no one else has been able to do and go places no one else has been able to go? And he says, sure. And then he starts this process of going into this program where they, over a period of like 2 years, they slowly onboard him into this research program where he's eventually brought into this underground facility. And he's told, you're going to work on the team that is doing biological research on this entity that survived a crash. And the story goes on and on and on from there, right? Like I've talked about this a billion times in this channel. But the Dan Burrish story, to me, has all of the elements of an amazing movie or a TV series. It's got these crazy characters. It's to watch him tell the story in a series of interviews back to back. You watch this man get emotional. He tears up at times. He cries. He gets angry. The full range of human emotions comes out in his story. It's not a dry story. There's a very human dimension to it that puts you in the position of a person who is way, way, way in over their heads and is just realizing, holy shit, this is what's going on. And you fall in love with a story like that. And whether it turns out to be true or not isn't really a factor. You're just like in love with the story. And then if it does turn out that it's true, that's great. If it turns out that there was never a there, you still have an interesting story. So I don't fault people for falling for a story or for falling in love with a story, because this space is filled with them. But where it gets iffy for me is when somebody just says, like Greer, outright, only I know the truth. Only I have the answers. I am the only one who has accurate information on everything that's going on. If you think XYZ and you didn't check with me, then you are wrong, or you have incorrect information, or you don't have the full picture. And when it comes to Greer, that's different from Linda. I don't see Linda ever do that. Greer beats that fucking drum every single time, and it's exhausting. So I don't know. If you're a curious person and you're fascinated by this stuff and you're into science fiction and you're a nerd and you like just exploring this space because it's interesting and there are other cool people in it, then I forgive anybody for like just falling in love with the story and getting carried away with it. I think that's totally reasonable. It's full of fun stories. Greer wants to be top dog. I mean, of what? I mean, Greer sells tickets to his events for $2,000 to $5,000 a ticket. If he has 50 people show up, he's pulling in 25 to 50K in a day, in one lunch. And then if they come for a weekend and they do the full package, go on his website. Look at what it costs to go hang out with Stephen Greer for a dinner with Dr. Greer and all these different things. It's just absurd. And the idea that that all of us in this space are somehow raking in a tremendous amount of cash from just being here is so far from the truth. You have a guy like Greer who's pulling in, $5-10 a head for these crazy events that he does. And then you have the rest of us that are just building channels and having, we're putting in time and we're doing coverage of the space, but it's not even close to the same thing. It's a struggle. But it's possible that, and some people do pay. A lot of people pay. Be surprised. That's the Greer grift. Lost Reaper Films. That's true. That's the Greer. Come hang with me. Free. We'll CE5 and eat pizza. Beth, I want to know, just curious if you guys would be open to this. I don't know. We're thinking about, this is so far out. This is like really far out, but maybe next year at Contact in the Desert, doing some kind of a get together that's sort of not officially part of Contact, but we're all going to be there. So we might do something off site, or maybe just, I don't know, do some kind of a outdoor excursion. We might do a CE5 thing. We might go out and do, I don't know, go eat barbecue and do some sky watching. If you guys are interested in something like that, start letting me know and just drop that in the, go to teamnightshift.com, put that in an email and send it to me, and just let me know, because we're looking at different things that we can do. And that's one idea that we've kicked around to just make it interesting and to get together and hang out, get out in the desert. All right. Let's see. Do we have any other super chats? I think we're going to go ahead and wind it down there, guys. This has been a busy 2 hours, but I've got to go ahead and wrap it up. Thanks for hanging out today. Thanks for everyone who participated, or thanks to everyone who participated in the chat. You guys are awesome. Huge thank you to our members. You guys keep us on the air and make it possible for me to come here and do this. And I also want to say a huge thank you to everyone who is part of our Patreon. All of our patrons are outstanding. Lost Reaper Films is one, and we have a great conversation. We get together once a month. We do a big conference call. It's been a lot of fun. If you guys are interested in that, you can go to teamnightshift.com. You can click on the Special Projects Division link, and that'll take you to our Patreon page, or you can find us on Patreon. Just search Night Shift. You'll find us there. And what else? That's it for now, guys. It's been fun. We'll be back tomorrow. We've got Doomer Friday tomorrow. I'm going to go meet with the team. We're going to figure out what we're talking about, but there's plenty on the menu. If you have some ideas or questions for us tomorrow, you can let us know at teamnightshift.com. Make contact, or you can leave a comment under this video. We'll check it. And you can also join us on our Discord and hang out there. What else? On Reddit, if you're on Reddit, go to our subreddit and follow us there. And that's it. That's where we are. That's it now. For now, guys, I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up. I will see you tomorrow at 2 p.m. Eastern time for Doomer Friday. And we've got a great interview that's going to drop over the weekend. As soon as I can get it done, it'll be out the door. So keep an eye out for that. Thanks for watching. Thanks to everybody who gave a super chat today and for all the support. You guys are amazing. I'll see you tomorrow. Peace out.